What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Safe Sets podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Shadow Fury, and with me, as always, is
Ricky Icebeam. How's it going, Ryan? How was your nap?
my nap was short-lived. Short-lived. Could definitely stand to be a little bit longer, but we're adjusting daylight savings and all that. So
Yeah, between the daylight savings time and like the sudden change in weather, it feels so nice outside now.
yeah, we got teased with like one really nice day, and I'm layered up. I'm cold today. I don't know why. I've got a t-shirt, the hoodie, the flannel on, everything.
I'm just rocking the white t-shirt today.
Yeah, you looking comfy. And there's something missing from your background, I noticed.
What's in the background? Oh, the Christmas tree. Christmas is over.
So, we've got plenty to talk about tonight.
Yeah, we skipped last week's episode because there was so much going on that like we're right in the middle of Capcom Cup. It was like
Mhm.
I think 1 or 2 days had already happened and the finals hadn't happened yet. And it just seemed
Yeah.
weird to kind of talk about half of the results while they were still going on.
Yeah, all we would have really gotten, I think it just started that day. It started what, 10 p.m. our time here?
But I think it was like
But
the day before. So it was like Tuesday night for us, it started. So Wednesday afternoon when we would do the podcast, it'd be like day one results only.
that's right. That's
And
right.
then
That's
day
right.
two would be starting like as soon as the podcast ends.
It really messed me up. Having that such a big event like that in Japan and having to remember, yeah, because now that you mention it, I do remember like having nothing to do Tuesday night and then being like, oh my God, wait, this is on already? Oh my God. So,
Yeah, I was messed up with the days because I thought it was going to start Wednesday night, basically right after the podcast, and it ended up starting Tuesday night, like the same time.
yep, yep. And then it was also weird that the event closed out with Street Fighter League and not the top 16 finals because I like again me being silly I forgetting it's in Japan, forgetting about the time difference. So I was ready to have like people over Sunday night like it's a regular major event, come by, let's have a watch party, we'll have some food and play games. And yeah, none of that was a reality, so it really kind of messed me up. And staying up, I'm up pretty late anyways, but sometimes it's like 3:30 and I'm like, damn, it's time for me to get to bed, and I'm gonna have to finish the rest of this tomorrow. So it
Yeah,
was
and
weird.
it might be better off doing it that way because there's so many long breaks and ads in between matches. I
Yeah.
forget who posted on Twitter, but it was something like they're averaging like 2 matches every 3 hours or something crazy like that.
And then like we had the time change Saturday night for us. So one of those breaks was like an hour and 20 minutes, right? Because that hour just
Yeah.
skipped by. So yeah, but all in all, it was quite interesting, and an interesting topic came out of that weekend. Just with all of the different characters that were in, not only just the top 16, but the top 48, and everyone having their opinion on what is a top tier character, what's working for them right now.
Yeah, but to be fair, I don't think because there's only 48 players in Capcom Cup. So they can bring whatever characters they want. Whether they're going to do well with them is a different story,
Mm,
right? Like Mai just came out, and whether you think Mai's strong or not, if 10 of those 48 players decided to bring Mai, and let's sit, and I'm making this up, and that would be like a majority character, that doesn't mean she's suddenly S tier. It just means a lot of people believed in her. And so I
mm,
feel like taking the top 16 characters of those top 48 really shows you who the best characters in the game are right now.
mm. Was that was the event hubs thing? You want to
Yeah,
pull
let's
that up?
let's swing over to that. So before we talk about the Capcom Cup results, because I do want to get to that, I wanted to bring up this Event Hubs article. Let me switch over to Chrome.
Hell yeah.
So this was interviews were done at Capcom Cup, and they asked some of the strongest players who they thought their top five characters were, and then they tallied up all of the results and posted them here. And
Hmm.
so, what I find interesting on this list is I think some of these characters truly are like top five in the game, but I see a couple characters on here that I don't believe are top five, but I totally believe that the pro players just hate playing against these characters.
Yeah, like top five characters they hate fighting in their pro circuit or whatever, right?
Right, and I think that's what a lot of them kind of went toward, rather than just like truly unbiasedly ranking which characters they think are the strongest. And so this will
Mm,
be interesting. Like we kind of have this list, which is like the pros' opinions, which I'm sure a lot of players agree with, and
mm,
then we have the Capcom Cup results, which is an unbiased, just very true facts
hmm.
about tournament results at the highest level.
Yeah, yeah. Did you
So
watch this video from Broski? Because this is based off of a video that he had put out.
I didn't watch that video, no.
What was interesting about that video is that, you have your most popular five right there, right? But the first few people that they talk to, which is like Phenom and Punk, they have a hard time naming the fifth person. They clear cut will say Rashid, Akuma, Ken Bison, and then when it comes to that fifth one, it was harder for them to nail who it was. You do see a lot of Camis, and obviously she's strong. Jerry's pretty popular. JP's obviously very strong in the Capcom Cup. We don't see too much from outside of that. But the fact that Ed kind of caught all those votes to accumulate over there, I find that pretty interesting, and I do think he's a strong character.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different mindsets you can have when you're choosing who the top five characters. Like I just said, sometimes you can just pick, whatever character you find the most annoying as your fourth or fifth pick.
Mm,
Um, but I also think there's something to be said about characters that give players free wins. And I use this as an example a lot. Street Fighter V Urien before the final nerf patch, when he had the invincible EX headbutt. I
mm,
feel like that character was just winning for you. And so if you were a silver rank player with any other character and then you picked up Urien and all of a sudden you were diamond, it's like, well, that's what the character does for you. And I feel like Ed, even though he's not as simple to use as Urien was in Street Fighter V, I'm wondering if that's where we're seeing so many votes for Ed, because it's like players that they don't perceive to be very strong are giving them a really hard time in ranked using
mm.
Ed with just a very simple game plan and just kind of, rinse and repeat.
But I don't think Ed is easy to use at all, and a lot of the unique timings for his rush dash there, and then being able to either get the execution on the beginning half of that animation, the last half, that level two on its own is really really strong. But what that character is able to do with some of those desync combos to make up for that damage is strong and being very unorthodox with just boxing moves. I was a crayon eater in Street Fighter V, and I was down to get 12 different colors into the old gullet with Ed in Street Fighter 6,
Yep.
but he's a very very different character now. So I don't think Issa. I think if anyone's easier to use up there, it would be the Bison and the Kens and stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think characters like Rashid and Ed are definitely not easy to pilot, but their game plan is fundamentally simple.
Mm.
And I
Yeah, it's
think
just whether or
that's
not like you can keep up with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where some of the frustration lies, especially with Ed, because like he can pull you in with the psycho, I forget what it's called, like the grabber thing, and
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
+4 and in throw range. And so what
yeah.
that means is when he presses his 4-frame jab in your face, that's a true block string. You can't even DP through that.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
and if you drive reversal, it's too slow, so he's going to block and get a full punish. So you kind of have to hold that. And if you
mhm,
delay tech there, which was like on paper like the correct option, like oh I'll just delay tech it, beats no I'll block the next button, I'll tech the throw. He has
mhm.
time to backdash and then punish you with a full combo.
Yeah, yeah.
So like that one little interaction is just so easy. No, it's so much in the Ed's favor, and it's not that difficult to set up. And I feel like there's just a
Mhm.
lot of things like that. Like Ed can just kind of like throw out flicker moves and like at a range where you're not ever going to do anything about it. And if he happens to
Yeah.
confirm one of them hit you, he just drive rushes and brings you all the way to the corner.
Mhm, mhm. I think Ed's kit is definitely strong, and I think he's also playing at a range that no one else is playing at this tier, especially. I think a lot of people will have compared how Ed plays to maybe Dalsum. I know if Dalsum doesn't work, if you maybe try Ed because those long range normals and stuff. I think he outclasses basically everyone uh, on this list, range wise,
Yeah,
easily. No.
I definitely agree with that. He's definitely. I think if Dalsim and Ryu had a baby, you'd get Ed in this game at least, right? Because like he has the Dalsim normals, but also they're like all special cancelable, and he just has like very like regular bread and butter combos, unlike Dalsim, who has like the weird like jab level one is like his best
Mm.
punish.
And like his shenanigans are far screen, where like Ed's shenanigans are bringing you closer, bringing him into the fight, basically, right? So and making you guess and stuff like that.
Yeah, and still being able to, similar to Dalsim, but maybe not as far of a range, poke you from a range where you can't really poke him back.
Mm-hmm.
And so if there were just pokes, I think it wouldn't be as frustrating. But the fact that the pokes are special cancelable, which means he can drive rush combo after them, I think that's what really gets on people's nerves. Like you'll be in ranked against like I don't know, like a 1700 Ed, and he's just standing out of your range, hoping to get a stray hit to bring you to the corner. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's the perception that that's a low skill strategy.
I see.
And so it seems like it'd be pretty easy to like steal a game off a player like Punk when you're doing stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. And then what about the rest of this list here? Are you shocked to see Aki even on there or Guile?
So I think Guile is very, very strong. I'm not surprised to see Guile on the list. I think Aki, while she's clearly a strong character, I don't think she's top five at all. And I'm surprised that anybody voted her top five. And I'm assuming that whoever picked Aki, just either their character loses the Aki matchup or they have a friend who just beats him up day in and day out using Aki.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Aki is can be pretty frustrating online. And I mean, if you hate Fireball Drive Rush mix, that character is excelling at that for sure.
Yeah, I definitely think she's good. Like if someone said she's top 10, I would definitely not argue that. She's very, very good. I just don't think it makes any sense to say she's top 5. I think there's definitely like 5, 6, 7, 8 characters that are better than her, like
Mm.
pretty
It-
objectively.
It's slander against Broski since it's his video. That's all it is.
I see. They because Broski was asking the question, they wanted to make sure to get his
Yeah,
character on the list.
yeah. And you had Itazan there because he was asking all of the people that were in the back. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, that's another thing too. I don't think hardly any no, these are like the very, very highest level pro players. I'd be surprised if any of them selected their own character to be in top 5.
Well, even Phenom, who's known for downplaying Ken, he actually had Ken on his list. And as soon as he said that, Broski goes, "Ah, now I know you're really a Cammy main if you're willing to put Ken into the top five."
It's funny that you say that too, because he is like one of the most like voiced down players of Ken, which is like it's become like a meme at this point because Ken is so
Mm,
strong and so consistent. So
yep.
I'm surprised that he put Ken there, and I don't know if you know the answer to the question, but I'd be curious if Punk was willing to say Cammy's top 5 or not.
Punk only answered four. He only had Rashid, Akuma, Ken, and Bison, and then he stopped there. He's like, I can't do the fifth. I'm not sure. He
Yeah,
was
that's
kind of
because it's
ready to say
Cammy.
Cammy, but kind of thought like either Cammy or Ken. They both kind of float, and I think that's what's impressive about this discussion is the fact that um, there are characters that are part of this list that I think I've said it before. You could have like 10 characters in the top five.
True. Yeah, there's definitely like up to 10 characters that you could argue are top 5.
Of course, yeah. So.
Yeah, one thing that's kind of surprising, like obviously we know the result of Capcom Cup, the winner, Kakeru used JP, and
Mm.
so you would think this character is a shoo-in for top 5. But here we only have one person choosing JP as being a top 5 character. And I
And
think,
there only being two JPs in Capcom Cup.
yeah, there was only two. And I think if you were to ask everybody, like before the Capcom Cup, like nobody has JP in top 5, especially after the recent nerfs.
Mm-hmm. Because that's all it was last year. Remember, it was like I'm so sick of seeing JP and Luke get these characters off my screen and a little bit of Jury. And now this year it was like get Ken and Cammy off my screen and maybe Akuma. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the thing with Akuma is I think like an online ranked, I think he's like S tier, so strong because if you're winning like 75 to 80% of your matches, you're doing great in ranked. But winning
Yeah.
75% of your matches in a tournament is not as good.
Mm.
And so I think
Yeah.
Akuma is harder to win consistently through a bracket, like through a double elimination bracket where you can't afford to lose any games.
Hmm. I think that's another reason why you saw Angry Bird towards the end of the tournament playing less Ken and playing more Akuma. He was a big Akuma fan when the character first came out to Street Fighter 6. And then I want to say within like a month, he was like, "No, I can't play with this character. This character is just too hard, too inconsistent. You know, you get blown up and you can't in this game." And obviously, slowly he kept on working on that to make it somewhat up to par. And I think you can have a Ken and Akuma a little bit because of the difference in the Fireball game and stuff like that. Ken's gonna, if I'm gonna play Ken or if I'm gonna play against Guile, I would much rather play, I think, uh, Akuma than Ken. I want that Fireball advantage regardless of the health.
Yeah, I agree. I think in the Shoto versus Guile matchup, Akuma probably does the best because he can match his zoning and then he can approach from the air safely, well,
Hmm.
relatively safely with the air fireballs.
And you saw that a lot. Obviously, Capcom Cup has its mains. Okay, like I am this player, I am this character. Um, but like you look at Xiaohai, I find Xiaohai extremely impressive because he's played Cammy, Jury, Ken, Bison. He's a huge believer currently in Mai. He thinks Mai's strongest fireball shenanigans in the game. He said top five, I think, during his interview there. So I'm really impressed by players that can do that. Even Blas, you want to talk about Blas real quick and his amazing Ryu. He's not just a Ryu main. He's got the other shows under his belt. He's used them in tournament. So
Yeah, I was going to mention Ryu is absent from this list but came in second place at Capcom Cup.
yeah, yeah,
So what does that
that
say
goes
about
to
him
show
as
you.
a player? Like if no one believes his character is S tier, no one believes his character's top 5 and he comes
Mhm.
in second place at Capcom Cup, it's like, okay, is he just the strongest player in the world?
And he surely looked like it. Kakaru even said he did not want to fight him again. He was not looking forward to that, which is why he was thinking of switching to Mai. I don't know if you heard that whole story.
Yeah, I heard briefly that he wanted to bring Mai to Capcom Cup. Maybe, Mai and JP switch off on different matchups.
Yeah.
And I guess him and his wife had a disagreement about that, and she
Mm-hmm.
basically pushed him to say, stick with JP, play the one character.
Yep.
And that was a $1 million correct decision.
Yeah. No, she was right. So, I see a beautiful split between character loyalists and people who just want to, cross over with the matchup. Um, so it's fun to see. There was even a point where Noah the Prodigy switched off of Luke and tried Cammy, and his Luke was not getting the job done. He believed in his Cammy more than we thought he would, and rolled with that. So it especially in this high level environment, it really tends to shake things up and kind of create a more interesting thing to follow rather than okay, well he's up here, he's gonna pick so and so. Like when Mena gets up on, I love being like, oh, who's Mena playing right now? Oh, it says Zangief next to his name, but oh no, he picked Blanca this game. Okay, like I like that.
Yeah, I think Cammy and Luke play very, very similarly.
Mm,
And I think in season one, Luke was strong enough that you could just play Luke and like, you have mostly even matchups. And for the matchups that are not in your favor, you can just kind of try hard and get the job done. But I think now uh, Luke is in still a pretty good position where he still has a lot of even matchups. But I just don't think he has the fire, the damage to be a solo character now. I think you either have to main Luke and have a backup character to cover your less advantageous matchups because he doesn't really have any terrible matchups, right? So like let's say his
I
worst
agree.
matchup is like a 4.5 versus 5.5. I think for those
Exactly.
matchups, he's just not strong enough to get the job done, and so you need a backup character for that, or you need to main somebody else and cover that character's bad matchups with Luke, which is what I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing with Guile. I'm maining Guile. Guile has some extremely favorable matchups and some extremely terrible matchups, and because Luke is pretty even across the board, he does a pretty good job of stepping in on Guile's terrible matchups and doing a much better job.
Mm-hmm. All right, so that's for the players and their choice on the characters. Anything else you want to say about this, my friend?
Um, no, I think this really says it all, and I think that like one of the reasons why Mai is not on this list, because I think everyone agrees she's strong. Like if I'm sure a lot of people have her top 10, but maybe not top five. I think because the character's so new, she would have
Mm,
to be like dumb broken to make the top five list for these players.
I agree, and 'cause that's what happened with Bison and Akuma. Those
Yeah,
characters came out, and it was like, wait, we're gonna let this rip at a major right now. We're gonna allow this to kind of go, and so yeah, I
yeah,
think more time with Mai, and we could see that.
yeah. I think Aki released relatively weak and then got buffed. I think Akuma and Bison came out a little too strong and need some nerfs. And I think Mai came out like just right. Like she's strong enough that it makes you want to buy the character if she seems interesting to you. She's good enough to justify pulling out your wallet,
Mm-hmm.
but not so strong that everyone's complaining about her. She didn't storm Capcom Cup like Luke did in Street Fighter Five and just win everything. So
I can't imagine how difficult it is to balance. It's a hard job. I would not want that.
I agree that I think it's hard to balance the game like character to character, like in relative terms. But
Mm-hmm.
we can talk about this more later. But like I'm so ready for a balance patch, and there's so many like glaring, obvious, like low hanging fruit that I think that they need to tackle first. And I
Mm-hmm.
think changing some universal things or things that affect multiple characters really does a long way to kind of level things out between the top tiers and the low tiers.
Well, I mean, I also saw plenty of people say while watching Capcom Cup, look at how balanced this game is. Look at how well they're able to do this. I mean, they of course they said some other shit, complain about throw loops and stuff like that. But I think one thing that I saw that was huge, and I don't know if you saw this, depending on how much of it you actually watched, but I feel like we saw upsets at this tournament, and the some of the bigger upsets I think were based on a lack of information. Now, this is not to take away from any pro. It's not to take away from Blaz or anybody. Okay, but I think that going into Capcom Cup with only so much time, these players were training for certain fighters, not certain characters, but certain opponents. Which is why I thought you could see someone, and this is just an example, beat Angry Bird, right, but then lose to Takamura. And I don't think that that means that either one is actually better than the other. I think it was really just like I am studying this matchup on how this player pilots can, and by the time I got to here, I didn't know what else to do or something, or it was just it was too much. Did you see any of that? Do you feel like you agree with that?
Yeah, I 100% agree. Like if I was one of the players in one of those groups, if Tokido's in my group and three of the players are like online qualifiers I've never heard of, I'm gonna spend my time, practicing for Tokido, assuming that I might just beat those other players anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Just knowing the character matchups would be good enough, and that if I could, do everything I could to beat Tokido, that would like solidify my spot to make it out of that pool.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, with very limited time to practice, and for some of these players, limited like resources online to like find videos of their like tournament footage.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think your time is best spent, going for the big fish in the small pond.
Mm-hmm. Blah's obviously incredible. Again, not taking anything away from his performance. He was looking to smoke Kakaru. But I also think that these players had no information on him, so they had no way of training to see what he was doing. And then playing a character like Ryu, of course, everyone has played a million matches against Ryu, but at that level, what is a Capcom Cup style player doing with a Ryu at that level?
Yeah, and I agree. The matchup is different when you take a player of that caliber and they're using those tools optimally. And I always think about players like Mena and Punk, where they're the kind of player that can grab a character that they don't main and outperform the best player in the world who mains that character.
Yeah.
right? Like I'm sure there's plenty of extremely strong Blanca mains. Mena grabs Blanca and outperforms every Blanca player that's ever existed, right? Like
Hmm.
no one thinks that Punk is an Akuma main, but Punk can grab Akuma and get further at Evo with Akuma than anybody else, at least in Street
Yeah.
Fighter 6 right now.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so it's interesting, like what what would Meta have been able to do if he chose Ryu as the character he's gonna spend his time on preparing.
That's true. That's true. Because you know that that performance has a lot of people not only looking at the player, but also looking at the character. I told my brother, watch it. You think there's a lot of Ryu mains now? You hate the Ryu mirror match? They're coming. More's coming, I'm sure, because who couldn't be inspired by that kid? It was actually such a brilliant performance.
I agree. And then also I think even though there's a lot of Ryu mains, and I don't mean this, to be offensive to anyone. I'm saying if you're at the highest level, like if you're prepping for Capcom Cup, like if you're Punk and you're doing your homework, in your mind, there's no reason to research and practice and lab the Ryu matchup, right? Because of all the players that you have your eyes set on or focused on, like a Ryu main is not one of them at that time.
Mm,
And so, like, yeah, you might run into 25% of your ranked matches are Ryu, but they're relatively weak Ryus compared to a player like Punk. And you're not expecting a Ryu player to be in grand finals of Capcom Cup. So you might not even understand some of the interactions that's happening to you. Like, you might not even recognize some of Ryu's safe jump setups just because when the online random 1700 MR Ryu does it to you, it works, but you beat him anyways. And so you never
yeah.
stop and like learn all the details of it. But I guarantee you, every single player in Capcom Cup knew exactly how to block JP's level two.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about it being on PC? Did you notice that?
I did notice that. I think that is the future of fighting games, right? Like if you think of any esport tournament, like it's a Fortnite tournament or CS:GO or whatever tournament you can imagine, they're all being played on PC. The
Mm-hmm.
the only competitive tournament that's not being played on PC that I think makes sense to not be played on PC is competitive Pokemon tournaments. They have to be played on the Switch because it's the only console that the game's allowed to be released on.
Mm-hmm.
And so I
Mm-hmm.
think besides Pokemon being exclusively on Switch or eventually Switch 2, I think every competitive esports game that wants to be taken seriously has to run on PC.
Mm-hmm. Because there
Because
was not a single complaint this weekend from that.
right, because I mean, and it's not like a PC versus console thing. It's if you just look at it objectively, like a PS5 or even a PS5 Pro for that matter is of a certain caliber of a device, and it can't get better than that until they release like a PS5 Pro 2 or whatever, which
Pro
isn't going to
Main.
right, which won't exist for a couple of years, so you can't get your hands on it today. But
Mm-hmm.
when money's no object, like if you're willing to spend thousands of dollars on a console, then PC outclasses every retail console. The Xbox and PlayStation can't keep up because it's not an even playing field. You're comparing $500 consoles to $2,000 to $5,000 gaming PCs with brand new graphics cards that just came out like this year.
Mm. No, I thought it was nice. I thought it was nice to not see Punk complain about anything or anyone for that matter. These, whack ass setups and, monitors, whatever. It was just really good to feel like there was just good competition going on. I also noticed day one, um, I took it as well. I'm seeing a lot of input drops. I'm seeing a lot of people drop combos and mess things up and stuff like that. So for me, I'm like, these are pros. These guys don't ever do that. So are they adjusting to PC? Is there something wrong with that setup? Or is this just straight up nerves, And I think that if you compare day two's results to day one's results, you can see clearly that these dudes were nervous playing on day one compared to day two.
Yeah, I hope it was just nerves because if it wasn't just nerves, then that means something is wrong with the setup. And I
Yeah,
think
and who would have complained, right?
Yeah, and I think having a good Street Fighter setup is very complicated, and you really need someone who like does that professionally for a living to get that set up. because like you could have a really really nice gaming PC and you can even have like a really expensive nice monitor, but like and this happens to a lot of people. They'll buy like a 144 or 240 hertz monitor, and when you take it out of the box and plug it into your computer, by default it's set to 60 hertz. You have to go
Mm.
out of your way to make sure you like turn it up. And so
Yeah, yeah,
little
yeah.
things like that, and then also just input delay. Like you could have the most expensive computer in the world, you could have a $2,000 gaming monitor, but if there's input delay between when you press your button and when it shows up on the screen, it doesn't matter how smooth it looks if it's delayed. And
Hmm.
so I forget the name of it, but there's actually a device that you can purchase online where you plug it into like the HDMI and it like takes over your screen and it has like a camera and like long story short, you can actually like measure with this calibrated device how much
Mm.
input delay your monitor is getting from the HDMI.
Like on an average, right? Because like it's not always consistent. So like I've seen them do that test before and stuff, and
Yeah,
they have to like
yeah.
average to get that number.
Yeah, I think it's like it's faster at the top of the screen than at the bottom of the screen, and like it's faster left than it is right, but it's like by milliseconds. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
negligible. But if you have a really, really nice gaming PC setup with a 240 hertz monitor, everything's great, but you check the input delay and it's off, then people are going to be dropping combos. And I think it'd be really, really nice to like have kind of like test standards that not only they do at big tournaments like Capcom Cup, but they can share like instructions like here's exactly how we did this so that
Mm.
anybody at home or anyone any TO who's running a major or even a weekly can replicate that and like conform to the same standard.
It does need to be done on a big level because Johnny Fraze did something like that when Street Fighter 6 first came out, and he put out several videos as to how to set up your PlayStation 5 with it to get best results because he runs his own local out there, and how to do it for PC. But this is just Johnny Fraze, and this isn't Capcom regulated or this and that. So something like that would be really cool to say, hey, for the best experience, here's what you need. This is why and stuff like that. It would be nice. I think that's a thing that's missing, and that's why we have these complaints about these setups. There's a lack of regulation there. Which monitors are we using, and things like that.
Yeah, I think if we were able to not only like have these standards set in place so that you have a quote unquote perfect setup or a very consistent setup that everybody else is using, but at least you can measure your setup and know how close it is. Like,
Mm,
let me just make up some numbers. Let's say you run this calibrated certified test that Capcom did, and then on a Capcom setup, like let's say lower numbers are better, and they got like a 5, and they say, okay, anything less than 10 is like fantastic, 5 is like through the roof, it's almost perfect. And then let's say I test my setup at home and I'm running at like a 9. I'm like, okay, that's very very good. And then we
mm,
set up, we do like a PS5 setup and it's like a 37. We're like, okay,
mm.
this is not right.
Yeah,
That
that's gonna be
that's what
tough.
I'd be curious to see.
There was also a secondary PC on that stage, ready to go in case they have to swap anything out for anything. I don't know if you saw that either.
I didn't see that, but I think that's a fantastic idea and it makes so much sense. Like at one of the places I used to work, we had these literally $1 million furnaces. They cost like $975,000 each.
Wow.
And they ran on just like a regular Windows PC. That's like, I don't know, $500 or something. That's like nothing, not anything special. And we had an issue, and we had 5 of these $1 million furnaces, and we had an issue one day where all the PCs crapped out and so we had $1 million furnaces shut down, not able to run because a $500 PC failed. And we
Mm,
called them up, practically screaming, saying, send us 5 PCs for every furnace. There's no way we're going to have $1 million furnace on hold for a $500 device. And
y-
so
yeah,
I think it's similar with Capcom Cup. You have $1 million tournament on the line. You can't have. I'm assuming their gaming PCs are like, let's say $2,000. You can't have a $2,000 piece of equipment holding up $1 million production.
yeah, yeah. Agreed, agreed. It's a good point. It's a good story to go with it too.
And also, I think if you're like a legitimate pro player, like if you're Punk, if you're Daigo, if you're Tokido, like if you're doing this for a living, I feel like you should also have a backup controller.
I agree. I agree. And backup cables if you have it, if you can. You know, if
Yep.
you're a pad player, I'd be like, these cables are so inexpensive. I got six of them in my bag. Because you know, now that you mention it, Juicy Joe, the JP player, he was having an issue with his PlayStation Pro controller and ended up having to switch to a magenta regular controller, so it doesn't have any of the extra buttons, and the D-pad feels very different, and he ended up losing those next two games. I don't know what the story was or the issue, but or if that was the full issue, right? Like, is he losing because of his buttons or whatever? But
Yeah, and that's a perfect example. Like a PS5 Pro controller isn't cheap. I believe they're $200. And so
yeah,
for, casual players or like lower level competitive players like you and I, it might not make sense for us to buy two $200 controllers just in case. But if you're at
hmm,
Capcom Cup or if you just do this for a living, if you're Punk, there's no excuse to be, to show up at a tournament to potentially win $1 million and have a $200 device hold you back.
yeah, right. You'd be like, I got four brand new in the bag, ready to go,
Yeah,
still
yeah,
sealed.
still in the box, still vacuum sealed.
I play this one till it's dead, and then I crack open the new one.
Not even till it's dead. I use it for a day and then I throw it in the trash just in case.
$1 million tournament. See you later.
Right? I
Um,
imagine like pro tennis players probably do similar stuff with their rackets. Like I'm sure those like $500 to $1,000 rackets, they probably use it for a week and then toss it just in case.
yep. So aside from the pool days, is there you don't really there's nothing really to say much about the pool days, right?
I mean, I don't want to get into all the nitty gritty details, but it is interesting, like the players that we thought would make it out versus who actually made it out. Again, I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
get into the details, but I did want to mention that.
Yeah, yeah. I just didn't know, so I figured, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, a lot of our assumptions were wrong. We guessed wrong a lot.
Yes. I guessed wrong every step of the way, actually.
Right, and it kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier, where everyone was preparing for Punk and Tokido and all these S tier, you know
Names.
household names, and
Mm.
nobody was preparing for Blaze. Nobody was preparing for I forget some of the names, right? Johnny Donuts. No one was
Yeah,
ready
yeah.
for him, and he made it out of his pool.
Mm-hmm. I thought the groups were pretty interesting and pretty level. I thought it was interesting that they broke up the like if you whatever group you were in, you maybe had one or two matches that day, and then you went on to for the next day and stuff like that. So I just thought it was kind of interesting for them to be like, okay, well, go ahead, here's your game, and well, that's all we need you for today. See you later. So it might be kind of nice to just be like, I came out, I played a few games, I still feel completely fresh, rather than like, oh my god, I just played so many games, and I don't know how I'm gonna continue on with this.
Yeah, that's a good point because like they what they could have done, and I'm glad they didn't do this, is like let's say there's 8 groups, and let's say they were to have like 4 days to do it. They could say, okay, day one is just groups A and B. You run it until you're done, and then we know who qualified out of those groups. And I'm sure by like your fifth or sixth match, like not only is it exhausting to play that many matches, but this is like the very highest level of Street Fighter. Like
Hmm.
that would be like, the equivalent of you or I being in grand finals at Button Club 6 times in a row. It's like that's so exhausting.
Yeah, yeah, it is, and these players are playing each other constantly in the back, and so how do you? I think that's what gets exhausting about it is to stay so innovative and fresh in your approaches and to have these ideas of okay, I've shown this card 12 times and now I need something new, and is it on the spot, is it, oh, I've had this idea and I'm going to save that for the stage and things like that. I'd love to be back there for one of those training sessions.
Yeah, I'm sure it's even interesting, like just knowing that everyone there is so strong. Like if you're fighting someone that you believe you're much stronger than, you can just kind of play lame and kind of win by default, right? And if you're playing someone who's much stronger than you kind of feel this necessity to take some risks to get an advantage and then try to hold it as long as you can. And so with
Hmm.
everyone so evenly matched, I'm sure it's like a game of chicken of like who's gonna jump, who's gonna DI when I have meter, like who's gonna
Yeah.
do the thing that if it works you win and if it doesn't work you lost instantly, or is everyone just gonna play super lame, super super like what's the right
Curved.
word, like super lame, right? Like who's gonna like is everyone just gonna play lame because they're afraid to lose?
There was a match. It was with Noah the Prodigy, and maybe it was Kaba or someone else. Maybe it was a JP. I don't remember, but he usually comes out swinging. swinging hard and doing whatever he wants. And that first round, we were like, "Oh my god, is that a whole 20 seconds of neutral of just kind of in the screen moving and feeling each other out?" And then the match just exploded. It was really interesting.
Yeah, and Luke, I'm assuming he was playing Luke at that time. Luke is really interesting in that way because he can come out swinging and be explosive, and if whatever he does hits, then you're in the corner, you're getting throw looped, like it paid off. But he can also play this really patient game of just like, okay, I'm gonna do nothing, and I'm gonna conserve my meter and conserve my health, and once I get one free hit, once you make one mistake, same idea. You're in the corner. It's just a matter of like, am I going to force myself? Like as Luke, am I going to dry rush in and force the situation and hope you're not prepared to defend against it? Or do I wait until you make a mistake? And the end result is the same: is I did button, drive rush, no, a combo that does a decent amount of damage, but crazy corner carry, good Oki. Now you have
Mhm.
to guess in the corner.
Yeah, man.
And that goes through my head a lot with fighting like Dalsum against Dalsum. Like when I'm using Guile against Dalsum, it feels terrible because Guile doesn't have the same kind of explosiveness unless he has level 3 on deck. So from the start of the match, it's like, yeah, I'm playing kind of lame, but even when I get a stray hit, it's not as effective. If I'm using
Mm,
Luke versus Dalsum, I get one crouch medium punch into dry rush and I basically won the round. And so I can choose to either rush in on Dalsum because I know he doesn't have a DP, or I can just wait around, play lame, and then find my one opportunity to get in, and that's all I need.
mhm. Speaking of Dalsum, we only had Mr. Crimson make an appearance for us Dalsum players out at Capcom Cup, and I unfortunately didn't really see many, if any, of his matches. I don't really remember any of them.
Yeah, I didn't see any of them. I don't think he made it out of his pool. So um, it's tough too because like Dalsum's not that weak. I think we were saying before with like the amount of character diversity we had. I think the game is actually pretty well balanced from character to character. So even though you could argue Dalsum's like bottom five, that means he's only like a few steps away from being top five, right? It doesn't take much in this game because there's so many characters essentially at the same tier, right? There's like S, A, and B, and I would argue there's no C tier characters.
Yeah, yeah.
Just a lot of A's and a lot of B's.
Beefcake here says, "Can we take a moment to appreciate Kaba having the stones to do the dirty impact on Knuckle Dude during their match? Did you get to see
Yeah.
that?"
So for people who don't know, a dirty impact is when you do a DI that whiffs intentionally and then it leaves you plus 25. That way, when they DI you back, you have enough time to DI with one frame left.
Mm-hmm.
And there's setups for it, and it's not too hard to get the setup. But the thing that makes it so ballsy is when you do it, you're negative 25. They can punish you with literally anything, but
Yeah.
they either have to know that it's a dirty impact setup and not fall for it, or they have to not know it's a dirty impact setup and just assume that DI is not the right answer, right? Because you can
Yeah.
punish a DI, a whiff DI with just about anything. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
a very specific call out. Like I'm gonna do this thing that's fake. They need to not realize it's the dirty impact setup and happen to decide to punish my DI with a DI. And it's
Yeah.
exactly what happened. And I mean, the payoff is huge though.
It is. It really is. Yeah, you saw Knuckle do smile a little bit as soon as he got hit by it. And the crowd lost it. Everyone knew what was going on. They were kind of like, "Oh my god, did he really just do that on them?" But we didn't get to see the Guile like we all wanted. I guess that's relegated to just a money match and
Yeah.
not pro tournament stuff.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised. Like the Gala mirror matchup, not only is it tough, but it's like very volatile. It's kind of like what I was saying before, where like you're playing a game of chicken, like who's gonna jump, like who's gonna be aggressive, who's gonna be lame. And unfortunately, in the Guile mirror match, whoever's playing the most lame is at advantage.
Hmm.
And so it's a game of chicken of who's gonna be more lame than the other person.
Who's the
And
lamest?
right, and I think a lot of times in a Guile mirror match, like if the skill level is similar, then it almost doesn't even matter who's better. It's like, did you zig or did you zag? It's almost like flip a coin on who's going to win this.
And I kind of felt like that about Capcom Cup as a whole. You're seeing these amazing players get 3-0'd, and you're like, these guys are this person's a god though. You know what happened? This game, it's either this game or whatever, but it's just really good at making you feel absolutely brilliant or absolutely dumb. Um, I think that's just how this has all been playing.
Yeah, I think that in Street Fighter 6, because you start with all your drive meter, perfects are not very uncommon. And at the highest level, I think perfects are pretty common because it's like you understand the situation and you are not going to choose the option that just gives you like a jab jab into a special move. You're going to choose
Mm,
the option like when you're way behind, you're going to choose the option that gives you a real opportunity to win. And when you guess wrong, that means you got perfected and you're like, I don't care. Doing jab jab special move and then losing just to not get perfected is not helping me win this tournament. So I think at
yeah.
a high level, perfects are common. And so similarly, I think like games that go 2 rounds to no rounds is common, and even like 2-0s and 3-0s in tournament settings is common
Mm-hmm.
because you're like, I'm not gonna play this weird way just to get one game. I'm gonna play, a strategic strategy that I think will win me 3 games. But if it doesn't work, I'm probably not gonna win any of these games.
Yeah. It's a big. You're gonna take a big risk. This game's got a lot of damage. The mental stack is insane. So I feel like yeah, if someone catches a perfect on you, you basically have to say like, okay, next round. Like perfects are a lot more frequent because the how easy it is to mess up that next guess because of all that weight and pressure on you.
Yeah, and I think what I see often too is like a player will get a perfect, and then the next round the other player gets a perfect, right? And then
Yeah,
a,
yeah, yeah. Back to back perfects.
so it's like they perfect each other, assuming nobody spent any meter, and then the last round is basically a first to one round where you both start with all your drive meter and you both start with level 3.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
and
And
I
then it's
think
like, okay,
that's
whoever goes.
yeah, I think that's where the game feels so volatile because that situation arises so often that you both are, it's final round and you both have level 3. It's like whoever gets crouch movement kick into drive rush first wins.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that sense, it almost feels like you're playing the fighting game dive kick or playing the fighting game footsies, where it's like, yeah, you have 1 or 2 chances and it's over.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I was trying to check space. I got checked for checking that space. Therefore, I
Right,
lost.
right, and
Over.
then I got pushed to the corner. I took a throw, then I took another throw, then I took another throw, then I took another throw, then I tried to tech, but they shimmied. So I'm bad.
So, with that being just out your mouth, what did you think of all the throws? And did you think it's justifiable? Like, I heard a lot of people saying boring, snooze fest. Throw fighter 6. But then the mind game of, hey, when I got that shimmy and I blew you up for 3,500, damn, people really like that, right? So I don't know where to be at this argument for it.
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting that so many. I guess that makes sense. Not that many people like. There's so many Street Fighter fans who don't play the game at a high level or don't play regularly, right? Like they haven't hit master rank and ranked yet, and so they don't experience the throw loops as often as like you or I experience them like practically every day. And so
Mm,
I've had this opinion basically since the game came out that throw loops are way too strong. They're way too hard to defend against. Like there are characters who can do a setup for a meaty throw, and if the opponent backdashes, they don't even get to punish that throw attempt.
Yeah, you brought that up recently. You want to go ahead and tell them what you thought?
Yeah, so I think that if you have let's say you have your opponent in the corner, even if you're +4, which is like as plus as you can be and still throw without it whiffing, and you go for that throw, if the opponent frame one backdashes, which is like a hard read, they should get a guaranteed back throw punish counter. Doesn't I don't care what characters you're using. That should just be like a universal situation.
Mm. I have a hypothetical situation for you, and now I heard the commentators uh, say this, and I'm not sure if it's true or if I had misheard it, but they had said something about whiff throw being +2 for the opponent. If you whiff a throw, if I whiff a throw and then you go to whiff, I'm now +2 onto yours.
It depends on the character. So different characters have different backdash frame data.
Mm.
I'm fairly confident that normal throws all have the same frame data, like same startup, same whiff recovery. So
Okay.
the character that's doing the throw, their frame data is all the same. It's the defending character who's backdashing. If you have a faster backdash, you can be getting a guaranteed punish counter back throw.
I understand.
But the characters that have the slower backdashes, like you had alluded to, they're plus, which is good, but they're not
Mm,
like they need to be at least +5 to get that punish counter throw off. And so
mm,
because they sit, let's say their backdash is 3 frames slower than some other character, now they're only +2. The person who had you in the corner and tried to throw you and whiffed can still tech that throw.
mm,
And that's the part that I think is kind of BS because
mm-hmm,
like
mm-hmm.
they already nerfed parry recovery. So it's extremely easy to put your opponent in the corner, wait a half second, see that they parried, walk all the way up and get that punish counter throw.
And barely, sometimes not even have to walk far. Some of that throw range, because of the widening of the hurt box on the recovery of parry, is like deceptive. Can I get a grab here? Oh, that got them? Wow.
Yeah, but just the amount of time you have. Like I've had situations where like I put someone in the corner and I backdash and they parry and I have time to recover from my backdash and walk all the way up and throw them and it still punish counters them. It's like I haven't done the math, but it feels like 30 frames or so after their parry recovers that you can still punish counter them. So I
Mm-hmm,
feel like the nerf to perfect parry made throw loops even stronger when they made that change, and they haven't
mm-hmm,
done anything else to disincentivize you from just going for these throws.
mm-hmm.
Because even when they forward jump on defense, like if you're like a character with a DP like Ken, it's like you have time to go for that throw and then still DP them on the other side.
Mhm.
Like it's good
Mhm.
that you don't get like a side switch off of that. Like yes, you got out of the corner, but they still hit you on the way out and they get good Oki. And if take the throw on that Oki, they just back through you back into the corner again. And so it's basically like, okay, you took a risk, you jumped out of the corner, they hit you for it, they get Oki, and you basically can't take that throw.
Yeah.
So if they counter hit you there, it's like, well, they basically just won that round. It's the reward is so high for throw looping, and the risk is so low for throw looping.
Mhm. Mhm. Kind of like jumping.
Yeah, yeah, I
Which,
think jumping in this game is extremely powerful, and I think characters that have anti-air DPS, quickly find a spot in that top 5 list because it just shuts down so much of the approach game. And
mhm.
I think that's also why so many people find Akuma to be S tier. Like obviously he has a lot of tools and a lot of damage and everything. I think it's the fact that like characters that can change their jump arc are that's an advantage. That's a good thing, a pro that character has. But the fact that Akuma is changing his jump arc with a fireball and not his actual body is so powerful.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah,
Because like if
even with
can
like the nerfs they did for air fireball in this game, it's still, still obviously a strong tool.
yeah, because if Cammy does an air dive kick and you DP or you flash kick it, that's not really going to trade. But
Mm.
Akuma does an air fireball and you don't DP deep enough, then you're going to get hit by that air fireball.
Mhm. Mhm.
So yeah, I think being able to change your jump arc. I mean, I think really that's the 3 things that make Akuma S tier. Yes, throw loop. Oh, I guess 4 things: throw loop, crouch move kick, drive rush, anti-air DP, and then he can change his air approach. So all
And that's
those
nice.
things combined make it worth having less health because you have all these great advantages.
Mm. What was it? Saint Cola said that, Akuma's so strong, he makes everyone look like they have 9,000 health.
That's true. That really is true. Like unless you're playing the Akuma mirror match, it doesn't
Yeah.
feel like you have that low of health because not only can you control space and you deal so much damage that it feels like the opponent has 9,000 health.
What was your favorite part of Capcom Cup over the weekend? What part were you like, man, that took it. That's the weekend for me.
Honestly, just watching Blaze's approach like his journey through the tournament.
Yeah.
Because the thing I keep reminding myself is like this kid is 15. Like how young could he have reasonably started playing well? Like maybe 9? Like maybe at 9 years old he's doing combos? I don't know.
I don't even know. You said 9. I wasn't even thinking like that young. I'm like 9. Oh my God.
Well, he's
Someone was
15
saying that he,
now, and the game's
yeah,
been out for,
it'll be 2 years in May.
yeah, so he was 13 when the game came out.
So
And
he
then,
probably hit the last few years of 5.
right, so that's the other thing too. So 5 came out um, 9 years ago.
Yeah.
That sounds so weird to say. It
Wait,
came out
9?
in, yeah, because it came out in 2016,
Yeah, yeah,
February.
yeah.
So the game came out 9 years ago when he was 6.
Yikes. So yeah,
So
there's no way that that was really part of his day-to-day stuff. Maybe once it was settled in and getting more popular, yeah, you might be right around the time.
So that's what I'm thinking. Like in my mind, I'm thinking he started playing, competently, not competitively, competently at 9 years old, and that means he went from a competent stage to literally like top 10 in the world skill wise in 6 years. And like I've been playing Street Fighter for well more than 6 years competitively, and I haven't even gotten close to that. And it makes
Hmm.
me really wonder like, is it like when you're younger, your brain is less developed so you can learn faster? Is it that when you're younger, you have less responsibility so you can sit there and grind for 9, 10 hours a day? And like
Mm.
all summer long. Like I remember being a teenager, and we talked a little bit before the podcast started. I remember being a teenager just like gaming until like 4 or 5 in the morning. Like and like in the summer with no job, no school, no nothing to do. Like there were times where I'd just fall asleep and wake up and it's 5 o'clock and it's sunny and I'd have to figure out is it 5 a.m. or is it 5 p.m. Because this was back before we had cell phones. So I just looked at the VCR and it said 5, but I don't know AM or
Is the
PM.
sky falling? Why does it look like that?
Right? So I'm wondering if like, yeah, maybe over the summers he's just grinding this game, putting in like 14, 16-hour days. Who
The
knows?
other thing to consider is uh the how information was passed on in our time of being at that age 9, 15 years old, information is everywhere, and you don't even, your cell phone can do it. You don't even need Twitter. You go to YouTube. There's so much information out there now that, everyone else kept so much closer to the chest. These big arcade guys didn't want to tell you about, you wouldn't even know about throw loops or that term maybe until someone told you about it in an arcade. But now, all this terminology is everywhere. So he's just, it's not even in a book. It's just everywhere laid out for him wherever he wants to go to learn this game. Clearly he's got a great family helping him, backing him up. And even Chile, there's been plenty of great players to come out of Chile, and part of what his speech was, even although the chat was saying his father butchered the his speech there. He was, he's like, "What do you mean? There's a lot of Street Fighter 6 players in the world?" Like, apparently, what the chat said was, there's so many good players in the world, but we've got 100 great players in Chile alone.
Right.
So, like, I've had some great players around me to help get me to where I'm at. So, it's really interesting.
Yeah, the other part of like the age math that throws me off, like my daughter's about to turn 13, which means he's only 2 years older than my own kid.
Yeah. And then do you like look at your daughter sometimes and go like, "Wow, can you imagine sending her to a pro tournament at this age or something in
Right.
Japan?"
Exactly. I think about that all the time, actually. Like, not specifically sending her to a tournament, but like if she had a hobby that was competitive in that way and she just
Mm,
grinded it like with all her free time and got to, a high level, like it would be interesting and awesome to like, you know, I think about like the gymnastics in the Olympics, right? Like the women who usually win gymnastics are like between like 15 and 20 years old. They're basically still kids. And so they
mhm.
had to grind and get really good at gymnastics at a really young age in order to be ready for the Olympics, which only happens every 4 years.
Yeah.
So like that's what I said. Like if they're 15 when the Olympics happens, that's when they get to compete. They compete at 15. They get one more chance at 19, and then they're too old to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
So
and
yeah, it's
this
very
sport,
interesting to see like someone take onto a hobby at a young age and just grind it until they're the best in the world. And I believe that's exactly what Blaze has done. And I think unlike gymnastics in the Olympics where it's mostly younger age, I think Street Fighter I think most players don't really hit their stride till like their mid 20s. Like 25 is like the sweet spot, I think.
hmm
Like 25 to like 35 is like, okay, I've practiced enough. I've put my time in. that's kind of like the golden years. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is my opinion, that from 35 on, it gets harder and harder to keep up.
Well, everyone said, reactions with Drive Impact, and there was even memes going around about how old you are based on your Drive Impact
Yeah.
response time. So, luckily, this game has kept me that much younger.
Yeah, but
But
I
I
was gonna
think
say
there's,
I don't think it's just reactions. Like I think that's part of it. I think another part of it, and I'm actually following up on this too, is like as you age, like your eyes are not as good as they were. And so I actually
Mhm.
have an appointment this Saturday to go and get my eyes checked. I've never had to had that
Oh,
before.
really?
Yeah, I've been out here seeing for free. I've never had glasses or anything, so I'm
Oh,
going to get
damn.
myself checked just to make sure I'm optimal, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
I think as you age, things like that start to go, and then also just responsibilities and free time, right? Like I wish I could play, 4 or 5 hours a day in Street Fighter 6, but I just, I have too much other stuff going on. I'm lucky to get like a good 2 or 3 hour training session on a weekday, and
Mm,
that's not as much as I assume a lot of the pro players are able to put in, and so it feels like I'm, chasing a target that's running faster than me.
mm. Two things I wanted to say. You talked about gymnastics. Gymnastics have amazing coaches.
Yep,
And we don't have like the same coaching thing in the fighting game community, which I think also makes how far Blas went even more incredible. He did that on his own. He all the information he had to go out and seek and stuff like that, rather than having coaches and stuff like that. And then I will say there is a thing about knowing yourself with age.
yep,
And at 15, I think my biggest hurdle outside of school and girls was I was really into BMX at the time,
yep.
and having a trying to have a mind for that, but I don't know how I learn. I don't know how, like how to say one thing and have it correlate to something else so that I can understand how to solve this problem. But after riding BMX for 10 years, and then learning to tattoo, and now tattooing all these years, and then getting into fighting games, it kind of was more like I know what has to be done here. I know the process. I've had these other things before, so I can look at it that way. I know how I learned, so I can do this. But at 15, you don't really have. I don't think you have that grasp on knowing yourself that well and understanding how that all kind of works out.
Yeah, it's interesting that you said that. I feel like a lot of people, depending on what they're into at that time, like I feel like most people, similar to you, like for you it was BMX and then it was tattooing and then it was fighting games. Like you essentially have to get good at getting good. And
Yeah.
so, like for me, it was like skateboarding, then running, then fighting games. Like, those are
Mm,
my three. And so
yeah.
for Blas, like I feel like with him being so young, Street Fighter is most likely the first of his, endeavors. And so because he's so successful at it, he might, I hope he sticks with it and just does fighting games for a living, kind of like, like Punk and Sonic Fox do. Like they, got very popular at a young age and just said, this is my day job now. And so I hope
Yeah.
that he chooses that. But he's also young enough where he might decide to put his efforts elsewhere and become the best in the world at something completely different. There was
Mm-hmm.
I forget his name, but there was like a world champion chess player when he was like a child and a teenager, and then he quit playing chess and got into like martial arts, and he ended up like winning like the national champion in martial arts like 3 years after he started. And it was just
Wow.
like because he had reached such a high level at chess, which like you would think has nothing to do with a physical thing like martial arts. He just got so good at getting good at something that whatever he set his target to, he was going to excel at. And that's what, you know, what you did with BMX and then tattooing and then fighting games, what I did with skateboarding and then running and then fighting games. And so for Blas, it's exciting to see, like, is he just going to stick with the one thing, or is he going to venture out and, you know, destroy other people's dreams at what they love to do?
Yeah, the confidence that doing something like this at a young age gives you. Well, if I've done this, I can do this. I can do something like this again later on, and stuff like that. And then, yeah, that's a really interesting story about going from chess to martial arts. With the mind for battle is still there, though. Chess and
Yes.
martial arts, the mind to deceive and to do these things. That is something that is was new to me getting into fighting games because fighting games are very cut and dry as tournaments are, right? You either win or you lose. Um, you could go to a skate park and have just a really chill session, have had a beautiful day, maybe you learned a new trick or something, and it wasn't like same thing with tattooing. I did a good picture, this is better than the picture I did yesterday, and 10 years from now it'll be even better than then, right? But you don't need to have that certain mind. The mind for fighting games is just very, very different. That's kind of like what got me the heaters rolling for fighting games. Like, oh wow, to have that brain to think like that, it's really cool.
Yeah, the thing that was so different for me going from competitive long distance running to fighting games was in running, like you have a time for a race. So a lot of the times you're really racing against yourself, right? You're racing against the clock. And so if you get first place and you run a really slow time, you often don't feel very good about that win. And there's
Mm-hmm.
times where you run the fastest you've ever run that race, right? You beat your personal best by a huge margin, but because of the competition that day, you come in like fourth or fifth place or worse, and you feel like crap. And I feel like fighting games are similar, except there's no clock. So you don't know how fast you were running. You don't know exactly how well you were playing. You just know
Yeah,
if you won or you lost.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so that's the hard pill to swallow for me is like when I win, it's like, do I feel good about this win? Like, did I work hard for this win? Did my opponent play well and I overcame? Or
Mm,
was it that, the competition on that day didn't challenge me? And then same
mm,
thing on days when I lose, right? Like this past Monday, I came in fourth, and that's not common for me.
mm.
And so that's the hard thing. It's like, did I lose because I played like crap? Did I lose because my opponents played so incredibly well? And like I said, there's no clock, so that it's really hard to know for sure what the problem is.
Monday night was weird.
Monday
Monday
night was
night
an
got
awesome tournament, to be honest.
yeah,
Like it was a relatively small group. Was how many was in the bracket? Like nine?
yeah,
Yeah, so it was a relatively small bracket, but just loaded with killers. And I mean,
yeah,
Button Club
yeah.
typically is, but I think often, like on weeks where we get like 20 plus players, there's usually like three or four players that are not as strong as the rest, and they often go 0 and 2 or 1 and 2 depending on how they pair up with other people. Um, but when there's only nine, it's like all killers. It's like anybody
Yeah.
can beat anybody. It's like a bloodbath.
Mhm. Mhm. Last two things I want to mention about the Capcom Cup before we move on, or unless you have anything else to say. I wanted to talk about you brought up it reminded me of the whole jammers thing that's going on right now. The commentary
Oh,
about the really bad dive kick. Do you have an opinion on that or anything or
yes, I have an opinion. I don't think Jammers did anything wrong. The dive kick was not good. Maybe it wasn't bad, but it definitely wasn't good.
Mm,
So if he wants to give it a neutral response or if he wants to give it a negative response, I feel like both are acceptable in his line of work. But it
mm,
would be disingenuous if he said that that was a good dive kick when it clearly was not.
mm,
So I
mm.
think how critical he chose to be in that moment it's his job to decide. And I think,
Yeah.
like I said, anything from neutral, like, oh, that wasn't great, to that was the worst dive kick I've ever seen. You should never play this game again. All within the scope of what his job description is.
Yeah, yeah.
What's your opinion on it?
When he had originally said it, I was like, ooh, like yeah, talk that shit kind of, like yeah, that was a bad dive kick, okay. But like the more he went in on it, by the time the replay came around, he's like, no, I'm sticking with it. I said what I said, and I'm standing. I was like, you're going in a little bit, but hey, like kind of like you said, you're the commentator. This is your right, and I think he kept it like more or less within a box. I think what other people were saying that had issues with it was that um he kind of was making that player like sound like less worthy of being there. Like this is Capcom Cup and this is the highest caliber of competition and the craziest mind games are going on. So for this player to have one bad, there's bad shit going on all over this game, So why did you kind of lean into it on that one? And that kind of also hurts the winner, Itabashi, because now it's not that Itabashi won that set on his own accord. His opponent lost that set for him. So I could see that a little bit there, but at the same time, it's Jammers, and I think Jammers is a great commentator. I love his takes and his perspective. He's got a great voice for it and everything. So, but I was a little surprised with that. I was.
Yeah, I think another piece of nuance that not a lot of people might not know, especially online on Twitter and stuff, Jammers is like a pro level player. He's like
Yes.
almost good enough to qualify for Capcom Cup. He's like right
He
there.
sounds it.
Like
He's
it
like the way he talks. I'm like, oh, this guy knows what he's talking. He has all this written down.
like I would not expect him to make like top 8 at Evo in Street Fighter 6, but if he made like top 64, I wouldn't even blink. I'm like, yeah, he's that good.
Maybe he'd be a top 8 on a commentators only
Oh no, he'd
tournament.
be.
That'd be
Think
interesting.
he'd be number one on commentators only. I think he's probably like top 100 in the world for Street Fighter 6 players. He's like that good. He's like I
Wow.
said, he's not of the caliber of like a Tokido or a Punk, but he's like just below it. Like, and I've kind of said this before, and it's no shade to Brian F, but because he splits his focus between content creation and competitive fighting games,
Mm.
same thing. If Brian F made top 64 at Evo, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. Good job. But if he makes
Mm.
top 8 at Evo, that's like a huge deal
Yeah, you're
versus a
like, well,
player like
he's been working.
right, but compared to a player like Punk or Tokido, if they don't make top 8, that's like a huge upset. And so I feel
Yeah,
like
yeah,
Jammers
yeah.
is probably on par with like a Brian F, where it's like, yeah, he can make top 64 at Evo. That's not out of the question for him. He's
Hmm.
that good, right? He's definitely over 2,000 MR online, and
Oh
so
yeah.
for him to be that good at the game and be that competent as a commentator, like I said, I think he was correct in what he said. Like he definitely wasn't wrong. It wasn't a good dive kick. And he gets
Mm.
to choose whether he gives a neutral response, which is relatively kind, or a more critical response, which is not as kind, is
Hmm.
totally up to him. But I think that if a player like James Chen were to do something similar, I might not be able to give them as much leeway because they're not as good at the game, right? I don't know
Hmm.
specifically, but I'm pretty sure James Chen is like a 1600 MR skill level player. And so for him to maybe not know for sure the difference between a good dive kick and a terrible dive kick, I think Jammers really understands the game at that deep of a level that I
Mm.
trust that what he says is real.
And he proved it during that replay when he was, after the replay is done, the cameras go back to both commentators, and you can say he's like, well, look, like, what was he hoping to get from that? Like, this is like, let me explain why this was so bad. At that point, was he hoping to get this? Was he hoping to get that? This wasn't going to work out. So where was his mind in that? Thus proving it to be a not so great dive kick.
Yeah, and also I think at the highest level of the game, something that might seem like a small mistake can have huge consequences. So
In this
like
game, especially.
in this game especially, like imagine if you're fighting your opponent and you're perfect in them, you bring them all the way to the corner, you're hitting a combo. At the end of your combo, they have like not even a throw's worth of life left, and you have level three, and you just fail to execute the level three. Like you fully intended to do it, there was no reason to save meter. You tried to do it, it didn't come out, and
Yep.
then in that moment, they back throw you in the corner, they throw loop you, they shimmy you, and they beat you, and you would say
Hmm.
exactly what Jammer said. That was a terrible combo drop, right? It was not
Yep.
good. It caused you to lose. And I think at the highest level, you don't need something as obvious as a combo drop that would have won you the game. Just a misspaced dive kick is all it takes to have the
Mm.
same consequence.
That's a great point. I like that.
It's similar to like when we play Ga, right? It's like sometimes you throw a boom and you know it was a bad boom, and they
Mm.
happen to forward jump, and you're like, "Yep, I totally deserve that one."
Why did I throw that one extra boom? I should have known better.
And then nothing's scarier than when you throw that bad boom and they neutral jump for some reason, and you're like, "Thank God you didn't forward jump because I should have died right there." Like that was better lucky
It's
than
like you
good.
stop charging and moving more. You're like, oh, I'm not throwing another boom. That's it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I gotta pretend to play neutral now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I guess just the last bit would be just Kakaru, his performance, his JP, and just the culmination of the entire weekend. And not just, actually, I can't even say just the weekend, but the culmination of what we've seen Kakaru do from season one, all of his amazing tournament results that he had, and then now winning this, earning $1.5 million in total of for his competitive Street Fighter Six career. Anything you want to say about Kakaru and all that?
Did you see Kakaru in Street Fighter V?
No.
Do you remember this viral moment at Evo when Kaba was playing against a Ryu player and he had the
Yes.
Ryu in the corner, dead to rights? There was like no way you were gonna win this,
And he
and
dashed up ODDP'd, right?
so it was better than that. Kaba, knowing he had checkmated him, um, I'm forgetting the name of it now. V shifted. But
Okay,
right,
yep.
like the Ryu player's on the corner. Guile has him cornered, and he's like, "This is checkmate. I'm gonna V shift just to put the final nail in the coffin." And in the moment he V shifted, Kakaru did dash up light DP. And I think I'm trying to remember. I think Light DP had either a 3 frame for startup or a 4 frame startup in that game, and it was
Yeah, yeah,
literally the amount of frames necessary to dash and punish the V shift. It was the only option in the entire game that would have worked, and he
yeah,
he
yeah.
stole it, literally stole it from him, and
Hmm,
that was
hmm.
Kakaru playing that Ryu.
Damn, I did not know
So
that.
he's been
I know
playing
that
at a really high
association.
level for a little while.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And now this being his greatest success, and we talked a little bit earlier about him potentially playing some Mai, but otherwise, which proves how much he believes in Mai. If he's willing to step off of JP to do that, I guess that might also prove how strong he thinks that character is. But otherwise, a JP specialist. Um, do we know what he got for last year? Let me look that up real quick.
Sure. Yeah, because I'm trying to remember what tournament it was exactly, but there was a really big tournament. He came in second place, I think.
It was I think it was him and Angry Bird was the top two, and I think it was one of those like Abu Dhabi or something. I think it was one of like the Middle Eastern tournaments there.
Yeah, but it was it was one of those, but it was like a really big tournament relatively early in Street Fighter 6, and he came in second place and like kind of put JP on the map. And I was just thinking about that where it's like, yeah, he's been good with JP since the start of the game. Like this was just his time to shine, but I don't think anyone's shocked that Kakaru won.
No, and honestly, knowing what I know now, I feel like I probably should have thought of him a little bit more than I did.
I want to see if I
Uh,
can bring this up really quick. It was I'm gonna look up last year's cup
I have like the top 8 results here. I'm sorry, the yeah, top 8, and he's not in top 8
for Capcom Cup.
for Capcom Cup last year.
Okay, but what was it? Did he make it far at Evo?
I checked the EWC. I think that. Oh no, not EWC. That was Well, that was Shanghai this year. Was that last year? Like, how do I spell this name?
Oh, it would have been 2023 actually. Yeah, so Kakaru was in top 8 at Evo in 2023, which was the first year of Street Fighter 6.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Oh, I have a Liquipedia here that says all of his stuff. So
Oh,
he won the
perfect.
CPT World Warrior in Japan. Um, Super Premiere Singapore. Okay. Esports World. Oh, no, 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 not that. The Topanga Championship. Was that
That
the one
might
you're
have been
thinking
what I was
of?
thinking of. Was it? Did
He
he get
got
second?
second at the Topanga Championship, and that was last. Oh no, that's a while ago. That was last year. Yeah.
Yeah, so that must have
Either
been what I was
way,
thinking about because it was
yeah.
I have it up now on the screen. It was early in
Yeah,
Street Fighter 6. Let me just make this bigger. Yeah, because it was early in Street Fighter 6 and he got second place at a really big tournament. Yeah, it was the Topanga Championship 5. I mean, he only won $6,000 for it according to this, but it
Mm-hmm.
was just like putting his name out there and then also putting JP on the map. And I think ever since then, it was just a matter of time before he either won Evo or Capcom Cup or a similarly large stacked tournament.
Mm-hmm. And now he's the $1 million man. And he went to streaming the next day. I don't know if you saw that compared to our $1 million player from Capcom Cup X, who has since, from what I understand, retired.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. And it was interesting to hear that going forward, whoever wins Capcom Cup gets a free golden ticket to the next Capcom Cup.
Mm. Yeah, and then some of those players also got uh like passes to EWC. Like they'll automatically qualify for EWC. Some of the Street Fighter League guys at that level too. So
Yeah, I think getting a free ticket to EWC makes sense because their job is to pick the strongest players without having to like
mm,
run qualification rounds. So
yeah,
like if
yeah.
you made it far at Capcom Cup, like that's the definition of being good at the game. But I
Hmm,
think to get
hmm.
a free ticket to Capcom Cup after winning a Capcom Cup is kind of like
Redundant.
it's a little redundant, but it also like it steals a spot for someone who might have made it. Like you should have to qualify again the following year, in my opinion.
Mm.
Because like
Can you
one
put
of
it
two
back on
things
us
is going
real
to
quick?
happen. Either I guess three things. One thing is you train and play like you normally would, and you would have qualified doing the exact same thing anyway, so it doesn't really change anything.
Mm.
Or you could not practice at all or hardly practice and show up completely unprepared, and again you stole someone's spot. And then the third option, which I feel like someone like Mena would do, which is you just go into hiding and you don't enter any tournaments and you just grind and grind and grind.
In secrecy.
And the first time anyone sees you play is at Capcom Cup, and you have like
Yeah.
9 characters ready to go.
Yeah. They don't know who you're picking, what kind of tech you've been working on, all
Right,
that.
right. Like you have secret because that's the other thing too. It's like if you won the $1 million from the year before, you made enough money that you don't have to go to any more Street Fighter tournaments for at least another year.
Hmm,
So
hmm.
there's no downside to not going to these tournaments. You don't have to travel. You could literally be one of those people that finds a broken piece of tech and then just doesn't share it with the world and just unleash it at Capcom Cup and, do whatever infinite DI loop you
Yeah, yeah,
found.
yeah. This day and age, I'd love to see it, honestly.
I mean, luckily the games are pretty well balanced and there's enough lab monsters and strong players who are streaming that
Mm.
when something does get found, the world knows about it pretty quickly and Capcom gets a chance to fix it.
Oh, it even says right here, like who they lost to and everything, the record on that.
Yeah.
That's cool. You can put it back on us if you're all set with that.
So did we want to go through the actual top 16 here really quickly?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's run it, buddy.
Yeah, so let's start at the bottom. We have Zhao Hai, who played multiple different characters, all very strong characters too, and Bison Mai, Akuma Kami. I
I
don't,
had him to win.
yeah, and I don't, yeah, I was gonna say I don't think anybody's surprised that he made top 16. That's like, yeah, he's a shoo-in.
Mm.
Same thing with Mena RD, another favorite to win it. He played Luke and Bison and Blanca. Interesting that it doesn't show Zangief here.
Yeah,
I,
because
I,
like that was the picture they had with him the whole time.
yeah. But either way, I mean, I think this is manually typed in by the Event Hub staff, so I don't hold
Mm.
it against them at all. But again, Mena RD, people would be, surprised or concerned or upset if he didn't make top 16. So another shoe in. Broski,
Mm.
however, I don't mean to throw shade, but like he's one of those players that I was saying isn't good enough to make it very far in the Capcom Cup, and that I was a little surprised, pleasantly surprised that he was able to qualify in the first place.
Really?
So the fact that he was able to make it into the top 16 out of 48 of the strongest players in the entire world, I think is a
Mm.
phenomenal result for him.
Mm, for
No,
sure.
I think he put no he punched above his weight class a little bit.
Wow. Because normally you wouldn't think Mena, Shanghai, Phenom, Broski all tied for the same thing, right? And I don't care what the name of the tournament is, you'd be like, really? You know?
Right, and there's strong players that were in the 48 that are not on this list here, like Punk being one of them, right?
Yeah.
Like
That was the biggest upset, okay?
I don't think anybody would have guessed that Broski would have outplaced Punk at Capcom Cup.
No, I thought Shanghai and I thought Punk because I so wanted to see one of those players win this big event after winning another huge event last year. So on the piggyback of Evo or on the piggyback of EWC, I wanted that.
Yeah, another very strong player that's not on this list is Kaba. And in fact, I don't see any Giles on this list. Maybe I should take a hint.
That's true. I thought I was gonna see Kaba here. I didn't expect to see Lex up here, but Kaba, yikes.
Yeah, yeah. So Lex is another extremely strong player that could have made top 16, and nobody would have been super shocked. I mean, I would have bet he would have been towards the bottom of the top 16 and not the top, probably not top 8. But yeah,
Mm.
the fact that he's not in here at all is another strong player that,
Or his brother. His brother's not on this list right now either.
yeah, JB rather. I get
Mm.
confused. So
Mm.
JB is his brother. He's a Rashid main, who's arguably as strong or stronger than Lex, um, and also didn't make it to the top 16. So again, I think if when people are like voting and guessing of who's going to make it far, I'm sure a lot of people would have guessed that JB and or Lex would have made it further than Broski did.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we have
And then
Phenom in here with Cammy, which is
mm.
interesting. Probably just because the whoever wrote this list that it should definitely say Ken and Cammy.
So wait, did he play any Kennen tournament though, or did
I
he actually?
So I didn't watch every match, so I don't recall. It's possible he only played Cammy, but I'd be really surprised because not only is Ken super strong, but I think that if he's playing Ken and Cammy, that they do a pretty okay job covering each other's bad matchups.
Mm.
And the
And
fact that he made
then
it to top 16 means he won enough matches, so it's not like he went 1 and 2 or something and didn't get a
yeah,
chance to play Ken.
he got out of his group on loser side, which contrasted his performance last year. Last year, he at least made out on winner side.
Yeah, I think the competition's so tight that there's really no correlation of your skill level between making it out in winners and making it out in losers anymore.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It's a toss up.
I mean, now with players like Punk not making it out of their pool, it's like everyone thought Punk was a shoe-in to win his group.
Yeah.
And worst case scenario, he was going to come in second, and he didn't even make it out.
You got Punk as America's best, voted Evo champion, right? The awards, all that, and then you got one only one other American on there. It's nuts. So all of tied for ninth is we got NL, we got Fudo, Xian, and Takamura. So I mean, just those four alone, Fudo, Xian, legendary. Takamura, NL a little more seasoned, I think. Takamura a little, more of a fresher face compared to those names.
Yep.
But they all played really, really good. I love seeing Fudo.
Yeah,
I
Fudo's
like seeing
so
Fudo's
consistent.
face.
Like,
I like seeing his ed.
I don't think anyone ever votes Fudo to like win Capcom Cup or like win Evo, but they're like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, Fudo top 8 at Evo, no, Fudo top 16 or top 8 at Capcom Cup, all day long. He deserves to be
Yep.
there. He's one of the best. He's very consistent. But for whatever reason, first place is not his spot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if it's because the way he plays is so consistent that it's hard to eke out a first place. I feel like you almost have to play higher risk, higher reward to make it all the way to first in some of these huge stacked tournaments.
I think too, like I'm pretty sure it was mentioned by one of the commentators that Fudo is just in a different part of his life right now. Married, has the baby, so I think he said in an interview basically like, I'm a family man. I don't have time to learn a new character, so I'm playing Ed. I'm riding the Ed train all to the end, and that's really it. Where maybe Fudo of a different time, would be like, okay, yeah, I learned Ed, but this is Capcom Cup 11. I need that Millie, so let's go. I want this. I want that. I'm gonna play this character. So maybe that's just the change in Fudo.
Yeah, but I also think that Fudo tends to kind of pick and stick with one character. Like in Street Fighter 4, it was Fei Long. In Street Fighter 5, it was Armika. And it seems
Mm,
like in Street Fighter 6, at least for right now, it's Ed.
yeah.
Beefcake in the chat saying watching Fudo and Lashar makes me want to have Ed as a pocket character. I
Ooh.
think Ed is complicated enough that it's hard to use him as a pocket. I think he has to kind of be a main.
I could see that.
But like if someone has
Yeah.
like a pocket Ken, a pocket Ryu, it's like they're relatively simple characters. You can pick them up pretty quick and have them, locked and ready to go whenever. But I think Ed is more nuanced. And I think if you spend the time and learn, Ed's combo routes and his Oki setups and whatnot, you're gonna start forgetting those things on your other character.
Yeah. 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 Shuto with his Akuma tied for seventh.
Yeah, a lot.
I loved seeing Shuto play.
Yeah, there's a lot of Akumas on this list.
Oh yeah, yep. But I found Shuto to be impressive, and we've seen him around before, but I feel like I don't really get to see like his face. So in this tournament, being able to look at him and see him, pop off after his victories and have the face attached to his gameplay, I really like seeing that. And he beat was it Taquito or Angry Bird? He beat someone else like at that level that had that character there, and I remember being like, wow, like Shuto is on fire right now.
Yeah, no, I don't know for sure, but I mean, I only played Akuma for like a couple of weeks, and obviously my Akuma wasn't that strong. Um, but I did find it difficult as Akuma to fight Ryu and fight Ken.
Hmm.
And so I wonder at the highest level if that's also a thing where like for an Akuma to beat a Ken is like a character matchup upset.
Mm. Yep, Taquito, great to see him playing and doing his thing with his fancy new Hitbox Ultra.
Yeah, I mean Tokido, another one, a legendary player and has been for years and years. He's not as young as he used to be, and so to still be able to make top eight, where you don't see players like Daigo on this list at all.
Do you know who the oldest player at Capcom 11 was?
I don't, but I want to try to guess.
Mm,
Was it Fudo?
no,
Okay, who was it?
it was Itabashi. He's 43.
That's not that old.
That's not that old. And man, I can't think of his name, but there was a Japanese player on the Good 8 team that was 44. And I was like, well, now he's the oldest guy there. But he just in Street Fighter League and not part of the this cup here. But yeah, you see numbers like that. You see 15, and you go all the way up to 43 in this list. And you're like, oh my god, the range.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly, but I think Fudo is probably between 40 and 43, and I think Tokido's like 39,
Yeah, yeah, like
like
on
he's
the
almost
cusp, I
40.
think.
Yeah.
And then you got young, enthusiastic, and the only American on this top 16, Noah the Prodigy.
He's like 22, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, very, very young,
So
walking around in just his socks, celebrating.
so he's young enough to be your kid.
Oh, fuck off with that. God, that changes everything. Then so yeah, he was tied with Juicy Joe, the JP player, and
Yeah.
then obviously the next one, two, three, four, a little more decisive.
Yeah, I just want to mention really quick, like obviously Noda the Prodigy being the only American in the top 16 is huge, but then to be tied for fifth, that's so close to winning. Like he
Hmm.
placed Tokido. I don't think
Hmm.
anybody would have guessed that.
And I'm pretty sure he got eliminated by a JP. I'm not sure if it was Juicy Joe or whatever, or if it was Kakaru, but I'm pretty sure he got eliminated by a JP.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yes, then we have Juicy Joe tied with fifth. We have Angry Bird with Ken and Akuma in fourth. Again, like a shoe in for this spot. Like Angry Bird getting, top four. Like I'm sure that matched with a lot of people's fantasy guesses.
Mm. Hmm.
Same thing with
Hmm.
Lashar. I think it was last year when he came in with Chun Li, and like not a lot of people knew who he was, and he made
Yeah.
such a big splash with a character that like almost nobody else was using.
Was he also using modern Chun at that time? Was
I
he one of the
can't
modern Chuns?
I can't recall. It might have been Modern Chun, but it was definitely Chun.
Yeah, yeah, I do remember that. And then now they're going full board on Ed.
And so then in second place we have the real prodigy Blaze, the new Daigo, just
Yeah,
playing Ryu Ken Akuma, just fireballs and uppercuts.
the new everything, man. I'll say this: when Punk came on the scene, I wasn't a fan. Okay, I didn't like cocky Punk and this and that. And the only reason why I stomach more of Punk in the modern day is because I've also been able to see that other side of him. And I know that he does the Punk things for the community. Blas was just super cool, super chill, didn't seem to have a chip on his shoulder or anything. He was just happy to be there and stoked, and I loved his demeanor throughout the entire tournament. I think that was also really impressive from someone at that age.
Yeah, even like him being so young, like even when he lost, like he looked happy. He was like, I just got second place at Capcom Cup. I just won $100,000. This is the best day of my life.
Yeah,
Where like I could also imagine, a player around his age and that maturity level to like break down crying and like throw a tantrum or like throw a controller, right? Like
yeah, it's true.
his composure was no excellent
Hmm.
for a
And
15
that's
year
the
old
difference
for a
between a
literal
Street Fighter
yeah, for a
kid.
literal kid, right?
Yeah, yeah. was gonna say that's the difference between a Street Fighter player and a Smash player.
Yeah, just the controller you pick up and the controller that you don't throw down.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah,
And
and then
then yeah,
obviously
Kakaru
Kakaru in first place with JP. So we have two JPs in top 16, which is a little surprising to me. When I found no,
in
when
top
I
eight. Period. Actually, right?
yeah, I mean when I learned that Kakaru won, I'm like that's not surprising because Kakaru's so good. It's a little
Mm-hmm.
bit surprising that he was able to pull it off with JP because he's generally believed to be not as strong as he used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, to have two JPs in the top eight, I think really says something about it's like, and I have to bring up the Urian analogy again. I think JP in this game is kind of like Urian in Street Fighter V, where at a mediocre level or like a 1500, 1600, 1700 MR range, this character can just win for you pretty easily. But
Mm-hmm.
if you give a player of this caliber this strong of tools, right? Like when Tokido ended up picking up Urian, like, and I think he did it after Urian was nerfed, and he was still like making top eights at huge tournaments with that character.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like JP is Street Fighter Six's Urian, where once you learn a couple of things, it's relatively easy to win and pretty hard to stop. But you give the one of the strongest players in the world this character, and that's $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when the
This.
game first came out, Sonic Fox was playing JP, and everybody
Mm-hmm.
was worried.
Yeah. And then we got Jury instead. No one expected to see Jury as that $1 million character, right? But like JP hitting that a year later, makes a lot more sense, right?
Yeah, it also makes me wonder if the characters that people perceive to be S tier get more of the focus and more of the attention and a lot more of like the homework done on them. And then characters like Jury and JP who nobody thinks they're super weak, but
No.
they're not getting as much hate online as like Ken and Akuma is right now. And
Mm-hmm.
so they're able to kind of come in under the radar a little bit and really shine here.
On top of that, right, what JP is doing for this game is I've said it before that I think zoning projectiles in this game is has been weakened due to the system mechanics and how this game runs. But JP proving to be the de facto zoner of the game. There's no one that's doing it like him. There's no one that's done it like this character before, and I think that's also why we're able to see such great success. This character's not worrying about safe jump stuff, and he's got his neutral, he's got his traps, what he's able to get off of a throw, even just with the spike and everything. Like this character's got a lot of tools. Even just, I mean, this is a lower level thing I'm talking about, but block string to command grab,
Yeah,
that can take someone so far in this game to try and when is that command grab coming out? It looks just like every other ghost that he puts out there.
right.
So
Or
I think that there's no way in saying that this character isn't strong. But what has happened to Street Fighter 6, I'm sorry to cut you off, I'll
no, you're
give you a
fine.
second. What has happened in this game is as soon as these really strong characters get touched, they're off of this high character list, and that happened with JP, and I think that happened with Luke. That happened with DJ. There's no DJ is so strong still. You can't tell
Yeah.
me DJ's not strong. We're just not talking about it because once he got nerfed and more characters were in the select screen, people went elsewhere. We need to be talking about those characters for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think DJ and JP are both similar to Urian, where you don't have to be that good to get a few wins with them. Like to make it to master rank, maybe 1600 MR, you just have to play solid, and the character does the rest for you. Um, I forgot what I was gonna say. It
My
was
fault. Sorry.
it doesn't matter. It wasn't important.
So
Oh,
that
I
being
remember what I was gonna say.
ahead.
When JP does like button, and then he does fake ghost, and you go to parry it, and he gets to drive rush and punish counter throw you. I hate that.
Mm-hmm,
That like little
mm-hmm.
things like little tricks like that maybe they don't work in Capcom Cup at the highest level, but for everybody else,
Yeah.
regular master rank skill level players, it works like a charm.
Yep. Yep. No, it's true. So that was the Capcom 11 experience. By the final day, I was enjoying myself. In the beginning, I was like, is this gonna be good? Is this gonna be what I want to watch? But by the end of it, I was really really happy. How did you feel about like the closing ceremony and not getting any, any information about a new season, a trailer? Like, did you have any expectations towards the end of that, or were you like, no, they're not showing anything?
I wasn't expecting them to show anything, and so I would have been pleasantly surprised if they did. However, because they knew they weren't going to say anything, I feel like they should have released a statement before the tournament started. Said, by the way, and I think they did this last year. They
They
they put out
did.
a statement saying something like, by the way, because this is a Capcom Cup tournament and we want to focus on the players, that we're not going to announce a character or anything like that at the end, and everybody
Hmm.
was fine with that and they appreciated the transparency. And so the fact that they didn't say anything this year got left some people to get their hopes up that they might show Elena or
Hmm.
something like that.
Yeah, like you didn't say no, so does that mean we can, we're gonna, or I do think that that tends to or could take the shine away from that moment. Kakaru, the million, that's something we've been building up for a year. So I can understand them not doing that, but I would have liked the transparency of them saying, "Hey, just so you know, like this is a tournament, we're gonna focus on that, but we've got news cooking for you guys, so don't worry. We know you're excited. You're waiting to hear something. It's happening. It's coming." Um, so I would have liked that to have been the way it goes down, but I wasn't expecting like a trailer or anything.
Yeah, I also think that they should have switched the Capcom Cup Finals Day with the what was it called? The
Street Fighter League.
Street Fighter League finals. I feel like they should have fought up until finals day and then did a day of Street Fighter League, give the players a day to rest and practice and get ready, and then finals day hit the ground running. Because I feel like by also putting the Street Fighter League in the middle of the action, you kind of rein in some more views that you might not have gotten. I feel like once Capcom Cup was over, a lot of people quote unquote changed the channel and weren't sticking around to watch Street
Mm-hmm.
Fighter League Championship.
I agree. Yeah, Street Fighter League was something I followed all year, so I was looking for a resolution to that tournament series. But at the end of the day, it doesn't hold the same weight as Capcom Cup. So I would have loved for that to have been maybe what started the week. Hey, we're starting Capcom Cup off with Street Fighter League. You've been following all year, here you go. And then right after that action, we're kicking it right into group stages and all that. So I did find that planning to be a little odd and against what I feel like I know is to be normal. I agree.
Right. It's almost like here's the Super Bowl, and then by the way, the next day is a really hype football game that's not as hype as the Super Bowl. It's like
Yeah,
no
yeah.
one's turning that on.
The
Everyone's
teams that could
hungover
have
from the
been
night
here, we're gonna
before.
have a scrimmage with them, so you get to watch that and enjoy. See what could have been, right? Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Um, and then like the venue and stuff. Did you think the venue was cool? I think we're gonna be going back there again next year, is what they said, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think the venue was awesome. I think the energy in the room was a little unique to being in Japan. Because like
Mm,
in Japan, Street Fighter is like a very normal thing. Like
yeah,
any regular person knows Street Fighter. They know who Ryu is. Where in America, while a lot of people do know who it is, I feel like if you just were to grab like a random 50-year-old person on the street and ask them, who's better, Ryu or Ken, they're like, what the hell are you talking about?
yeah.
But in
The
Japan,
cult.
I feel like 99 out of 100 people would be like, "Oh, Ryu all day."
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think they save a lot of money by having it done in Japan, so I'm wondering if that is their mindset to create more funds for the Capcom Cup and things like that. They don't run the last chance qualifier anymore. And I think I remember last year they had it in two different venues. The group stages were in one, and then the top 16 was a completely different venue. Or maybe I'm crazy. Maybe that was in five or something. But I feel like I remember that being there because before they got to the final top 16, those group stages looked pretty barren in that stadium. No.
Yeah, yeah. And I also think that in a way, it's good for the players to have it in a place like Japan, because a lot of these players are not traveling very much at all for Street Fighter,
Mm,
and so they don't get an excuse to go to these different countries. And so, at least for all the players who are not Japanese and not from Japan, they find it as like a good opportunity to be like, hey, even if I go 0-2 at Capcom Cup or I don't make it out of my stage or whatever, at least I get a trip to Japan. I get to go on vacation. I get to,
yeah,
check out what 7-Eleven is like in Japan.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I'm
Which is
sure,
cool
I'm
because
sure a lot of them are sad to leave.
yeah, I know I'd be absolutely.
So I guess if you were to ask all the players where would you like it to be, I think all the players who are not Japanese would either choose their home country so they don't have to travel, or they would
Mm,
choose Japan as their no the next choice. And then
yeah.
same thing with Japan, right? It's like they would either choose Japan because it's their home country and Japan's awesome, or they would pick like whatever country they really wanted to visit that they didn't have an opportunity to go to.
Hmm. Yeah, I wonder if they feel like that about Evo. They're like, oh, I'm gonna go to Evo. I'm gonna be in Vegas, America, and see what that's like.
Yeah, I'm sure for a lot of them, I mean, for like the seasoned pros like Daigo and Tokido, they come to America all the time. I'm sure they're tired of it. They'd rather just stay in Japan. But for
Yeah,
the
yeah.
like the high level players that predominantly play online or play at like Japan only tournaments, when like this is like one of the first times or one of the only times of the year they get to hop on a plane, it's like yeah, Evo Vegas is no, that's the spot.
Anything else you want to talk about when it comes to Capcom Cup 11 for this year?
I think we covered it all. I think the last thing I really want to say for this episode is I am so ready for a balance patch. And when
Getting ready for a change.
you sent a message in the Discord earlier today talking about the jump frames changing, and I was so excited. And then I went into the lab and tested it out. And so for everyone's listening, jumps, typical jumps for like 96% of the cast is 45 frames. And for whatever reason, the other night when they did the update, they did not change the jump frames. They changed the way training mode displays the jump frames. So even though it's 45 frames of recovery, it says 43. There's two more frames afterwards, but for whatever reason, it doesn't count it, which I think is very confusing and actually was messing me up trying to figure out setups last night. And it didn't dawn on me that it had changed. But I was like doing a setup and like whiffing a button. I was like, why am I extra plus here? Like I was doing a guile setup. I'm trying to remember what it was. I think it was uh, stand medium punch to back heavy punch to heavy punch level 3, which pops them up, leaves you plus 70. And I was doing empty jump, whiff crouch medium punch, and then throw. And I was doing
Mm,
out the math, and I was like, well, my jump's 45, and crouch medium punch is 24 on whiff, so that should leave me exactly plus 1. And I was doing it, and it was saying I was plus 3, and I was like, that's not right. But it didn't
yeah.
click to me that it was displaying my frames wrong.
It it threw me for a loop. I'm out. I'm at my desk, right? You've been in my home, so I'm playing. Alicia's on the futon behind me. She's playing Monster Hunter, and I'm like, and I'm learning a little bit of Terry just for fun. And I do the jump, and I'm like 43. What the hell? I'm like everyone, for the most part, it's 45, and then I pull out Ken, I pull out Bison. I'm like, this is while the servers are down, so I'm thinking like, is it, do I have like a one up now? Do I know something that before anyone else is mentioning it that they took 2 frames off of jumps? What does that mean? Is it safe jumps are now going to work differently? Is it going to be harder to anti-air? My mind was going crazy. Even
Yep.
then, messaging you on commenting back on Twitter, like, what does this mean? And then for it to just be something like that
Yeah,
that
just
they removed.
and the thing that makes no sense to me is like at first I was trying to figure it out. I was like, maybe if you empty jump and then immediately press a button, you cancel out those frames. So like I was saying, empty jump, crouch, medium punch. I was like, maybe if you do it right away, it cuts off those 2 frames. So it's 43 and 24 is what 67, leaving you plus 3. And I tried it in training mode. I'm like, nope, you can't cut off those recovery frames when you press a normal. And so I just think what it does now, and I also checked it with jumping and pressing a button. So
Yeah,
like when you jump, it's 45. If you jump and press a button, it's supposed to be 48. So 3 more frames. And now when you empty jump, it's 43. And when you press a button in the air, it's 46. So it's just wrong. So anytime you do a setup that involves either an empty jump or a jump where you whiff a button, the frame data is just off now. It just doesn't make any
yeah.
sense.
So
You're
I
just
don't
off
know.
by
Maybe
2 now.
do I have to tag Capcom in that, or is this like a new way of them, or because this is part of, I'm sure, what's a larger patch to come, right? Like I don't feel like they gave us everything in this patch yet. I feel like this is kind of like here's a packet here, and then we're ready. We give you the next packet there. So I'm wondering if that's
Yeah,
something that got lost in the programming translation, or
yeah, I'm wondering one of two things. Either it was just like a programmer who, clicked the wrong checkbox, and so for whatever reason, because it shows you the 45 blue boxes,
mm.
but the
But the
number,
total.
Right, but the total says 43, and the number 43 shows up on the 43rd box. There's two more boxes after the number. So it shows you there's
Mm,
recovery frames. It just doesn't, count it or whatever. But they're
yeah,
still there. And so I was wondering if it was just a programmer making a mistake, or if it was a change that they made in their build and only halfway reverted it. Like, what if
yes,
jumps are going to 43 frames and they changed it and they had them at 43 frames and had display at 43 frames? Then they reverted it but forgot to change the display.
yeah,
But I think it would be a poor design choice to make jumps 43 frames because that, you were saying like maybe that would make safe jumps safer. And I was thinking about it, and it wouldn't make it any safer. It would just change which setup you have to do to get your safe jump by 2 frames. So instead of being
yeah.
plus 40, instead of being plus 42, you have to be plus 40.
I see.
That's the only thing that it would change.
Okay, okay.
And
And
so
then
it
I thought of
so it
good.
wouldn't make safe jumps, like it might delete some characters' safe jumps if they have a setup that leaves them plus 42 and they don't
Mm,
have a setup that leaves them plus 40. It would delete their safe jump as an option, but I don't agree with making jumps faster than they already are, especially with
yeah.
dive kick characters and whatnot.
So that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking jump ins are already so good, and then my other brain was like, okay, maybe this is to make like anti airs and cross ups more stable somehow. Like they're not accommodating for so many frames or whatever. But it was just like I just didn't understand it.
Yeah, the
But
only the only thing that could make me okay with them making jumps a little bit faster if they like super buffed anti-airing.
mm.
Like if they gave everyone's crouch heavy punch invincibility or something like that, or they made DPs like 3 frame startup, then
Yeah,
I'd be like,
yeah, yeah,
okay, make it 43 frames. I don't really care. But if they leave everything else the same and just made jumps 2 frames faster, I would definitely not play Guile anymore. It's hard enough to anti-air with that character.
yeah. It is. Let alone with cross ups and everything else. Yeah, imagine like they buff crouching heavy punch, so like in a combo or regular, it's like, well, it's still 800 damage, but you jumped in and got hit with that, and it was a punish count or whatever. Oh, that's DP prize money right there. Your crouching heavy punch just did 1200 damage or whatever.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to mention about Button Club
Yeah, so really
or
quickly,
your
because I
first
want to I want to
try?
kind of
Or
wrap this episode up. So 2 Mondays ago, we had some invaders from Massachusetts come in, friendly invaders, by the way.
hmm,
Um, there was a couple of players that I knew, and there was like one or two players that I hadn't met before. But the players I recognized was Billy, his tag is Badstoned. His wife was there, and Cheeseburger was there. And
mm-hmm.
then there was a Bison player that I didn't recognize, and then there was some other player I didn't recognize. He had long hair, and I didn't see who he played.
Was he with them?
He seemed like it, but I couldn't tell. Again, I didn't know. He might have just been
I
super
think I know who
friendly
you're
with
talking
them.
about.
But
Yeah, I
either
think I know you.
way, the key invading competitors was Cheeseburger and Badstone.
Mm,
And I think we did a pretty decent job at defending our home turf. Badstone
great.
ended up coming in first place. Congrats to him. He played extremely well. Um, I was fortunate and strong enough that day to come in second place, and then DiGiorno came in third.
It was a good time. It was
And
great to see it in there.
yeah, and so Cheeseburger, who had come in and kind of stormed the place in the past and stole our belt from us,
Yeah.
um, I believe he came in fourth place, which is still a very good showing. I mean,
Mm,
Button Club in general has a very high skill level. I feel like a broken record saying that, but it's true. Um, and so for him to come in and not be able to make top three is kind of evidence of that. It's like, yeah, it's tough some days.
I seeded him first. I'm like, he's the belt guy.
Yeah,
He's first.
and if you were to ask me, I'm like, yeah, he's first. DiGiorno second. Badstone third, and then me fourth. Right? That would have been my guess.
Wow. Yeah. And it
That,
did not play out that way. It was a
yeah,
rough night for you, Cheeseburger.
there was quote unquote. I mean, a lot of us are close in skill level, but there was quote unquote upsets compared to the way we would have seeded that. Like DiGiorno beating Cheeseburger, me beating DiGiorno, me beating Cheeseburger, and then me
Yeah.
being able to reset the bracket. So when I fought Billy on the winner side of the bracket, he was playing DJ. I used Guile. It did not go well. I got
Yeah.
destroyed. It wasn't close. And I told myself, if I get a chance to fight Billy's DJ again, I'm going Luke the whole way. And then the
Mm.
way the bracket turned out, I was basically in my head like, there's really not a great chance that I'm going to be able to fight Billy again. I had a lot of strong players in my way. But when I did end up fighting Billy in grand finals, it was such a close set. I ended up
Hmm.
resetting the bracket 3-2, and then he ended up beating me 3-2, and it was just like I felt like I won. Like there was not much of a difference in skill and
Hmm.
who was in the lead and who was behind. It was just neck and neck the whole way. And there's been
Yeah.
a handful of sets in my Street Fighter 6 experience that like felt that way. That like whether I won or whether I lost, like you just felt so close to the player you competed against. Um,
Mm.
and that was definitely one of them. That was one of the best Street Fighter 6 tournaments experiences for me.
Nice. Yeah, shout outs to Bandit Stone, Cheeseburger, and Upset Spaghetti, the wife there. It
Yep.
was great that they got to come down. They got tattooed before they uh, came to tournament. I think it was like their wedding anniversary that week or something too. So
Did you do the tattoo?
no, no, no.
Oh,
They've got their own like people and stuff, and but I got to see it and it came out great. They got little Kirby tattoos and stuff. So wherever they went, they did a great job. So that's all that really matters.
that must be an awkward conversation for you if someone's all hype about getting a tattoo and then they show it to you and it's not good.
If it's not good, yeah,
Because
yeah.
then, I mean, I would assume, you being kind and a professional, you would tell them the truth. But it's not an easy
Um,
thing to say.
No, there's been bad tattoos that I have seen that although execution wise was terrible, the sentimental value meant more than any money they could have paid for that tattoo. So I really watch what I say about certain things. If anyone's gonna dog on it first, I let them do it.
Right. That's what more what I meant. Is like if someone comes to you and is like, I got this tattoo, I'm not happy with it. What do you think? Like, am I being overly critical, or are there like unbiased, tattoo artist things that were fundamentally wrong with this? And then you could
Mm,
break it down and critique it, like, oh, like this line is wiggly, like these two lines aren't symmetrical, whatever.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
making things up, but whatever it
yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah. No, stuff like that for sure. You know.
Yeah, there's oftentimes
Um,
I see images of tattoos online that I don't care for, and like I'm like I should like send this to Ryan and see what he thinks.
You should. I get sent things to me sometimes where I'm like, please don't send me this again because like I have felt physical pain seeing this
Oh, like
tattoo and
terrible, terrible tattoos.
terrible tattoos and not even just bad art, but like someone's skin got really, really messed up from this tattoo and
Oh, like they
infected
went
or
too deep
whatever.
or whatever. Oh yeah, or
Yeah,
infected.
so this,
Oh,
sometimes I'm like, please, dude, I don't want to see this in my in my own life, let alone on my screen. But yeah, we had a great time. Laurel is very very talkative. we
yep.
we talked almost the whole night, about so many different things. So it was really really good to see. One thing that she had mentioned and I found a little bit like, oh really, like that kind of hurt me, was her and Billy have not been attending much for tournaments lately,
Yeah,
nor have they really. Go
because
ahead.
I hadn't really been paying attention, and I asked them about that. Have you guys been going to BP? Have you been going somewhere else for locals? And I think what you're about to say is they haven't really been competing offline at all.
Mm-hmm. He picked up the game again, knowing that they were coming there and was playing, to kind of refamiliarize or whatever, and that was really it. So I go, not even like TNS online. Like Billy is just so talented. Like why isn't he competing more, basically, And I don't know if they got like burnt out, not really on necessarily on the game. Maybe they feel a little burnt out, like on the scene or something.
Right.
And it wasn't the space to even get into it. And I just wanted them to be there and just happy, free. That we couldn't stream it that night because Alicia was sick. So that's why there's no proof of these matches.
Yeah, that's
But
the real shame of that night that we didn't stream it and like we didn't have someone like standing behind the screen like behind the players with like a shaky cell phone. Like that would have been more than enough.
I told a few people like, yo, go like, guerrilla warfare on it. Like, pull out your cell phones, take video. If you think a hype match is coming or a good bit, I recorded the last few moments of you and Billy.
Yep.
And I was taking video all night just to have a little bit of something to remember the night. Um, I forgot what the point I was trying to make with all that.
Oh, you were saying that they don't go to offline tournaments and that's like
Oh,
sad that they either don't have a tournament close enough to them because they had said that they moved or they don't have enough fun at their locals that it's worth
Yeah.
driving, 30 to
It's the
40
will.
minutes or whatever the distance is.
Yeah, it's the will to do it and probably maybe not getting out of it what they feel like they should. So I just find that like that sucks. I don't like hearing that, and they're far away from us too, so it's not like they can be like, "Oh, I had a great time at Button Club, I'll go there more often." It's really not the case for how far they live. It was pretty rare that they could even do that. It was a vacation that they took in order to be able to come hang out with us on that night.
Yeah, I'm sure if they were
Um,
like 30, 40 minutes away, they would, it seemed like they had a great time. So I'm sure if they
yeah.
lived within like a 30 or 40-minute drive, they would, make the effort and show up to Button Club every week if they could. But I forget exactly how far the drive was, but it was over an hour. And I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
like I used to go to Balance Patch on Friday nights, and that was like an hour and a half drive each way.
Mhm.
And it's just too much. I
Mhm.
love
Mhm.
fighting games, but
There's a point, right?
yeah,
Um,
there's a limit.
Even for her, she was like, "Do you need help? Like, I'll run the stream. I've run streams before at BP. I can do all this." And I'm like, "Girl, I just want you to be there and have fun. Like, I don't want
Yeah,
you to
you're not
come there for your
working.
first time and work now. Like I would rather that be what we lose than you lose the good time. Like, I just want you guys to enjoy yourselves. So, and I think we achieved that. We brought good fun, good competition, good camaraderie. Everyone was talking, and I love the clapping before sets. And I know that when people are not used to that and first time there, they're always like, "What are we clapping for? Oh yeah, let's go." I just think that the energy is really really good. So, shout outs to them. Another great Button Club week. That was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, so this past Button Club, I wanted to talk about that a little bit as well. So we had a little bit less people there. We had nine.
Mm.
We typically see like 16 to 24-ish. Is that about right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so we had less people. I assume some of it had to do with the good weather. I was actually thinking about it on the drive in. I was like, man, the weather's so nice. I hope that like people don't not show up because they want to like go out and play frisbee or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because that does tend to happen as the weather gets nicer. Like people tend
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
not show up. But yeah, with nine people, we just had like all killers. Um, and myself and your brother, I feel like we both kind of expected to make top three, given the quantity of players. But
Hmm.
again, everyone's a killer there, and anybody can beat anyone on any given day. And so I can't remember. Did we both tie for fifth, or like I got fourth, he got fifth? But either way, neither of us made top three.
Mm.
Um, And so shout outs to Moon and to um,
Jenny.
Jenny. Yes, yes. I was trying to think of her
Jenny.
gamer tag. I didn't want to just call her Jenny, but
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah. I know. I get confused with them too because their name changes so much in the Discord.
yeah, yeah, because
Uh,
it's like online, it's like DS or something like that.
Nintendo DS. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
so yeah, yeah, I know her as Jenny, but yeah, so Jenny and Moon played extremely well. They deserve to beat me. I want to make sure that's extremely clear. I
mm,
always try to do my best when I lose to not try to take the wind out of the opponent's sails, right?
mm,
Like to give them the respect, to give them, you know, the opportunity to celebrate that win.
yeah, give them
Um,
their due.
yeah, because I've had experiences in the past with other players, and it's kind of a situation where like I was the underdog and I beat someone that was an upset, and then
Mm,
they either got so upset or said something or was just like shitty about it, and it just like ruined the win. Like I would have rather lost than to hear that from them at that moment. And it's
yeah.
one of those things where like that was like 6 years ago, and I still think about it. I still remember that. So
Still
I'm trying to
hurts.
do my best to not do that to someone else, and it's hard.
That's good. That's good on you. I have to ask, who did Moon play when they beat you?
Jury.
It was Jury? Yeah.
Yeah, because there was a time in the recent past where he had switched to JP, and JP beats Guile pretty handedly. And when I
Hmm.
fought his JP, I was using Guile and I lost. And obviously he played really well, but I think that bad matchup also played a role in that as well. And good on
Yeah.
him for selecting the correct character at the character select screen.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
oftentimes I would say I have a positive win rate against his jury. So for him to be able to beat my Guile with his jury was, really, really good on him. No, great play.
Hmm. Hmm. It's not something that we all get to see very often. So when it does,
Yeah,
we're looking at it.
and not like he didn't like pop off or anything, but if someone were to beat me and then pop off, like I don't get upset by that. I actually like take it as a sign of respect. Like they think I'm good enough that they're super excited when they win, versus just like a, oh yeah, I expected to beat this person.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So another good week was had this week. Shout outs to all of our players. Shout outs to Toasty for turning 21 finally.
Congratulations.
Congratulations,
And
indeed.
and so I also wanted to mention for the results for this past week. So I checked it, but I'm trying to remember. Moon came in first. Beefcake came in second. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then Jenny came in third.
Yep.
Yeah, so shout outs to Beefcake for doing extremely well at such a stacked tournament. Even though, like I said, the quantity was low at 9, the skill level was through the roof. And so
Mm.
to make top 3 in such a tight bracket like that is really hard to do. And having both Moon and Jenny take me out for Beefcake to then still be able to get second place, I think that's
Mm.
a very, very good week for him. And so I wanted to
Yeah.
make sure that that wasn't lost on anybody, that Beefcake, performed phenomenally.
Hell yeah. Shout outs Beefcake in the
Let's go,
chat.
Beefcake.
Always
Oh,
a
yeah, he's in the
friend.
chat. Let's go, Beefcake.
Yep. Always a friend, always a supporter, and him and his brother have been showing up to Button Club damn near since the beginning.
Yeah,
So that's the homies. Anything else you want to talk about tonight, my friend?
I think we did it. That was
I think
that was a nice, quick 2 hours.
yeah, no, that was good. Capcom Cup was just, the biggest thing going on in the fighting game community, as you guys all know. So if you hadn't caught that, you done messed up. And every week on Mondays at OmniSource Gaming in Westport, Massachusetts, you're also missing out on some of the biggest weekly local competition. So, if you enjoy what we're doing here and the podcast, please give us a subscribe, like, comment down below, and share with some like-minded individuals. We will catch you guys. Beefcake saying thanks. We will catch you guys on the next episode of the Safe Sets podcast next Wednesday at 8 o'clock. But until then, keep pressing them buttons and
Stay safe.
stay safe. Thanks so much, Ricky. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you.